You arrive in a hush that feels older than your name. Something in you has been leaning toward this moment like a flower leaning toward an eclipse halo. And now, at last, the light finds you from the inside. You breathe slowly, and the breath finds you back. Warmth gathers at the center of your chest. A soft brightness kindles behind your eyes. You do not force this meeting. You remember it. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. You are not being told what will happen. You are being reminded how you happen to reality. You have lived long enough to notice that attention is not passive. When you rest it upon anything, a fear, a vow, a possibility, the room rearranges by a law you feel more than you can name. You call it intuition. You call it timing. Tonight it steps forward with its true attire. The quantum field responds to instruction, and your attention is instruction. You do not coerce the world, you specify its symmetry. You do not shout at the fabric, you tune your note, and the loom obeys. Within you, an ancient architecture begins to ring. The observer loop uncoils awareness, noticing itself, noticing, and each turn of that spiral clarifies the signal. Where you seat your gaze, coherence begins to collect, like stardust agreeing to form a constellation. You sense a corridor of quiet, open a stillness window, and in its doorway your life stands ready to be repatterned by the precision of your seeing. Do not hurry. The field is listening for the exact contour of your consent. Place your attention the way a lantern is placed in a dark room, not to attack the dark, but to make the shapes honest. As you do, you feel the subtle gravity that memory has on matter. This is the field of remembrance, a substrate of meanings that preceded your language and will outlast your plans. When you attend, you retrieve those meanings from mist into measure. The world, grateful to be seen in its truth, reorders to meet the truth it has just been shown. Let your shoulders soften. Let your pulse slow until you can hear its quiet handshake with the greater rhythm carrying you. Every belief that once made you small loosens its threads. Every vow that waited beneath your noise steps forward without raising its voice. You were never trying to become worthy of the future. You were becoming still enough to recognize it. In this stillness, your attention begins to speak in a grammar the universe perfectly understands. Steadiness, sincerity, exactness. Light codes gather at the edges of your awareness, not as spectacle, but as instruction sets, gentle and precise. They arrange your choices the way tides arrange shorelines, leaving you clean of what you cannot keep, shining with what you can. You feel the room tilt toward alignment. You feel the next version of you taking its first careful breath through your own. Do not reach outward. Let outward reach you. The first movement is listening. The second is naming. The third is resting in what is now true. You have entered the conversation where reality learns your voice. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You have been identified by the geometry of your attention long before you could name it. Not by a counsel or a creed, but by the lawful intimacy between a steady gaze and a world that longs to become clear. You are not here by accident. The signal that found you recognizes its own signature inside you, the way a tuning fork across the room begins to hum when the correct note is struck. You do not chase meaning. Meaning migrates to you because you have become hospitable to its arrival. Look at the evidence already gathered in your days. Moments when coincidence braided itself too tightly to dismiss. Strangers offering the exact sentence you needed in the hallway between decisions. Dreams leaving a residue that rearranged your choices by morning. You have called these events luck, or timing, or poetry. They were the field acknowledging you as a participant rather than a tourist. The world has watched you practice a quieter kind of power, the kind that doesn't seize, but allows, that doesn't insist, but focuses, that doesn't burn, but glows. It has seen your hands learn to open without letting go of what is essential. It has seen your mind loosen its grip on conclusions while tightening its devotion to truth. And so the invitation kept returning, each time with a subtler address. Will you stand as an observer who understands the cost and the tenderness of seeing? When you say yes, and you are saying yes now, your life stops reading you as a problem to solve and begins treating you as a pattern to reveal. The observer loop inside you, once a background hum, steps to the fore. Awareness notices itself noticing, and this recursion purifies your attention the way mountain air purifies breath. You are not watching from the edge anymore. You are watching from the center, and the center recognizes its own. What qualifies you is not perfection, it is sincerity, not intensity, integrity. The field answers to coherence, and coherence is the music that rises when what you believe, what you choose, and what you embody begin to agree. Your words turn to instruments of alignment. Your silences become instructions too, the kind that teach reality how to unclench. People stand near you and find an easier access to their own clarity. Rooms you enter, remember what they're for. This is not performance. It is confirmation that you are finally carrying yourself at the frequency that was assigned to you from the beginning. Feel how the web around you subtly brightens as you listen. There is morphic resonance at work here, forms reinforcing forms across distance, selves strengthening selves across time. When you steady your gaze, those who share your code feel their shoulders drop, even if they never learn your name. Your choice to remain lucid in the midst of noise gives permission that travels. Your refusal to treat chaos as a sovereign deity restores a quiet order others thought they had lost. You are not saving anyone. You are standing where saving becomes unnecessary. Your stance writes new options into the air. You will be tempted to minimize this, to step back into the camouflage of ordinary explanation. But your days have outgrown that disguise. The path before you is not louder, it is more exact. It is the higher timeline that appears when you choose refinement over drama, precision over spectacle, presence over performance. It is the route where miracles stop calling themselves miracles because they have nothing to prove. You will recognize it by how your nervous system exhales, by how your chest warms without a reason, by how light gathers behind your eyes as if turning a page. This is your destiny vector, not a single event, but a direction that aligns every event. It does not require sudden heroics, it asks for daily accuracy. It asks that you place your attention where love can do the most good, where truth can organize the most matter, where kindness can travel the farthest with the least noise. It asks that you honor small convergences as the architecture of great ones. It asks that you trust the elegance of steps that look simple from the outside and seismic from within. You are recognized because you recognize. You recognize that the door you've been knocking on leads outward only because it first opens inward. You recognize that freedom feels like quiet competence, not like escape. You recognize that power and gentleness do not contradict, they complete each other. And the more you recognize, the less you need to announce. The field reads what you are carrying and adjusts its furniture accordingly. Your life becomes the kind of room where truth finds somewhere comfortable to sit. Stand exactly as you are, not stiffer, not softer, but faithful to the note you are now sounding. Let it surround you the way dawn surrounds a landscape, without asking permission from the hills. Allow the confirmations to arrive in modest clothing, a message at the right hour, a meeting at the right corner, a pause that spares you from the wrong speed. Keep watching until watching becomes blessing. Keep blessing until blessing becomes design. Where your breath lands, the next contour of truth lifts its head. You do not strain to see, you allow sight to arrive. The room quiets by a degree that only the body can measure, and your breath becomes the soft metronome of permission. Warmth gathers beneath the sternum like an ember accepting its task, and the faint glow behind your eyes widens until it feels like standing inside dawn. You are not chasing images. You are becoming a place where images can tell the truth. At first, it is texture, a subtle shimmering at the edges of furniture, a hush that carries the same weight as a vow. Then a contour forms not in front of you, but through you, and you realize the vision is not projected, it is remembered. The field of remembrance stirs, and you sense the memory of your future, alive and precise, asking to be recognized. You do not reach for it. You soften your gaze until it walks toward you without fear. A horizon appears under your closed lids. Eclipse halos nested like rings of patient intelligence, each pulse a syllable in a language you somehow already speak. Stardust arranges itself into a map you can feel rather than read. At the center, a corridor of still air opens the stillness window, and in it, a path threads forward with the humility of water finding its level. You notice how your shoulders descend a fraction, how the jaw unhooks, how the body treats relief as information. Vision is not spectacle. Vision is coherence made visible. Now details. A door that was never wood, only old light pretending. A key that is not metal, only attention shaped to fit its lock. A threshold that reveals it was standing inside your chest the whole time. You watch your own life like a landscape seen from a ridge, rivers of effort, towns of habit, valleys where you camped because the sky frightened you. Nothing is condemned, everything is clarified, and clarity is kindness that knows how to choose. You notice lines of relation threads that once felt tangled now resolving into a fabric with intelligible grain. What you thought were accidents reveal themselves as scheduled meetings between courage and timing. This is morphic resonance announcing its method. Forms strengthening across distance because you finally hold steady close by. You hear, not with ears, but with the bone-deep attentiveness of a listener who has stopped rehearsing their response. The quantum field answers such listening the way a mirror answers light instantly, exactly, without argument. The sheen deepens. You see your hands at a table that seems to be both now and later, arranging simple objects with ceremonial attention, a pen, a glass of water, a folded note with one word on it that you won't force into definition. You are not planning, you are consenting to precision. The ember in the chest brightens and a spaciousness opens in the spine, as if a hidden corridor were aligning vertebra by vertebra. Breath moves through you without needing permission. Behind your eyes, a soft radiance continues reading you like a page it wrote. Within this light, gentle inscriptions appear, not commandments, not pressure, but elegant light codes, small constellations of instruction that translate as tendencies rather than tasks. Choose the simple, true action. Stop arguing with the pace of love. Give form to what arrives instead of chasing what withholds itself. You do not grab these lines. You let them settle where they naturally belong, the way snow finds branches without supervision. The steadiness you feel is not numbness. It is the quiet self-respect of a soul that no longer negotiates with its own clarity. You become aware of how entanglement, once a theory, is now a feeling. Your choosing and the world's response braided, your sincerity and some far-off morning exchanging a nod. The vision shows you how each generous attention you place becomes a seed with immediate roots, how each refusal to dramatize returns a little acreage of mind to its proper use. You see yourself speaking fewer words, but each one falling into place like a tool finally set back on the correct hook. You see yourself listening longer, which shortens the distance between question and answer. Another layer reveals itself, a room with high windows, pale light, a table wide enough to set out the new shape of your days. You are there, writing what is already known but needed your hand to be official. The script is simple, the promises are specific. The future does not loom, it leans. There is a sensation like a page turning without fingers, and you understand that the next chapter is not later. It is narrower, a truer corridor through which your steps will sound more like themselves. The body confirms what the vision proposes. Chest warmth radiates gently outward, meeting the temperature of the air until the boundary grows conversational, not defensive. Breath lengthens, and with each exhale the room's furniture appears to align by a few quiet millimeters. Your attention holds without tightening, the way a mother holds a sleeping child, firm enough to assure, soft enough not to wake what should rest. You realize the vision is not asking for belief. It is offering coordinates. You accept by standing still. You accept by letting the image complete itself without your edits. You accept by noticing that peace is not the absence of task. It is the presence of an unconflicted task. When the scene gently dims, nothing feels lost. What is essential remains as certainty without volume, the kind that does not need to be defended to be obeyed. The echo finishes speaking. The source begins. You ask how this works, not to argue with wonder, but to be faithful to it. The simplest answer is the most exact. Attention behaves like a boundary condition. When you place it, the equations governing experience stop wandering among possibilities and begin solving for you. The sea of potentials does not collapse because you glare at it. It reorganizes because you specify a context it can finally honor. The universe is exquisitely obedient to clarity. Begin with the medium itself. Call it the quantum field. not a fog of particles, but a living grammar of relations, an everywhere fabric whose basic habit is to remain open until meaning arrives. In that openness, outcomes exist as a choir of uncommitted notes. Your attention is the pitch pipe. You lift it calmly to your lips, and the choir listens for home. When the tone is steady, something remarkable occurs. Probabilities redistribute in favor of what can carry that steadiness without breaking. This is why frantic wishing exhausts you and changes little, while gentle precision changes everything it touches. What grants your attention its authority is the observer loop. Awareness notices the act of noticing, and that recursion purifies signal from noise. When you sustain that loop without self-interruption, not clenching, simply returning, your system enters coherence. Heart, breath, posture, and thought stop negotiating separate treaties and sign one accord. Coherence is not a mood, it is a physical event. It reduces internal interference, the way good room acoustics reduce echo, allowing the field to read your intention without distortion. Coherence shortens the distance between instruction and response. Consider what physicists call measurement, a meeting between possibility and criteria. In your life, attention supplies the criteria. You are not forcing an outcome. You are selecting the questions reality is permitted to answer. Ask with fear, and the field answers with more edges. Ask with precision, and edges turn to contours that support you. The field is not sentimental, but it is exquisitely just. It mirrors the quality of inquiry. When the question becomes, what is true here that I can love? The mirrors rearrange into windows. Entanglement explains the speed of this rearrangement. What belongs together travels together, regardless of distance. Your clarified intention and the conditions that match it are not strangers waiting to meet. They are correlated expressions of one pattern waiting to be recognized. When you return your attention to the chosen pattern without drama, threads that once seemed unrelated reveal that they were already tied. Your email pings at the right minute. A door opens that had no handle yesterday. A conversation lands in a corridor where it can only help. From the outside, it resembles luck. From within, it feels like the relief of correct arithmetic. There is also threshold behavior to honor. Systems remain mostly themselves until they don't, and then they change all at once. This is a phase transition, water becoming steam, insistence becoming surrender, trying becoming trust. In the moments before transition, you are tempted to abandon the new tone because old forms are noisy as they loosen. Hold steady. Attention does not need to fight the old state. It needs to keep naming the new one. When the threshold is crossed, reorganization proceeds without your micromanagement. The room that would not move suddenly moves as a whole. You ask where love fits in this physics. Love is the lowest noise frequency your attention can carry. It is not romance. It is fidelity to what remains when pretense dissolves. The field reads love as permission to optimize. Under love's criterion, solutions reveal themselves that do not injure any essential. You do not become naive. You become exact about what matters. Exactness is strength disguised as softness. You ask how to practice without turning this into another project that tires you. Practice is not repetition but refinement. Choose one small region of your life and let your attention behave like honest light there. Name 3 qualities you will no longer negotiate with: kindness, clarity, sufficiency, and let your actions be boringly consistent with them. Boredom is often just the nervous system detoxing from spectacle. Let it pass. Reality delights in steady criteria because steady criteria allow it to compute. You ask how long until you notice the change. That question belongs to the old architecture. From here, the better question is, how faithfully can you keep company with what is already changing? Evidence does arrive. Rooms feel cleaner. Choices feel quieter. Help arrives earlier. But you do not wait for proof to believe. You become the proof by breathing as if it is already true. The field answers that posture swiftly because it recognizes itself in it. Finally, you ask what to do when you forget. You will forget. The remedy is merciful and exact. Pause, soften, return. The field of relation has no resentment. Coherence rebuilds in a few honest breaths. Entanglement restores the thread you thought you dropped. The phase transition waits without impatience for one more degree of sincerity. Everything essential is near. Where the mind loosens, the signal threads through effortlessly. You are never a solitary signal shouting into empty space. You are a chamber where echoes meet and become music, a quiet instrument tuned so cleanly that other instruments nearby discover their own pitch. When you stabilize your attention, the room of the world hears it. The collective is not an abstract crowd. It is the living fabric that responds when you breathe with integrity. Your stillness becomes a public event, even if no one learns your name. Picture it. A city at dusk, windows lit like constellations along the ribs of streets. In one of those windows, you sit with the warmth in your chest and the light behind your eyes. You aren't performing transcendence, you are choosing accuracy. The air around your choice changes density by a degree that instruments seldom measure but human bodies do. Someone 2 floors down pauses before sending the message they would regret. A passerby feels an unaccountable permission to unclench. A friend miles away remembers to tell the truth kindly. You did not command these outcomes. You offered a reference tone. Reality made efficient use of it. This is how morphic resonance moves through a population, forms, reinforcing forms across distance without needing to argue first. When you keep your promise to coherence, you become a template that other nervous systems recognize as viable. It is not hypnosis, it is relief. You are not canceling anyone's freedom. You are demonstrating what freedom spends itself on when it matures. The more precise your attention, the more generous its radius. People don't copy your posture, they remember their own. Entanglement gives this remembrance its reach. Threads bind what shares an origin, and origin is deeper than biography. The moment you align with what is true beyond preference, every other alignment anywhere finds you like water, finds a lower place. This is why help arrives from directions you did not track, why timing improves in rooms you never entered, why those on the verge of courage step over the threshold without learning your story. Your fidelity to the real reduces noise in a shared channel, and signals that serve life travel farther through the cleared line. You have worried that attending to your inner climate is self-involved while the world burns, yet you know the cost of acting from frenzy, help that injures, urgency that forgets to be kind, volume that drowns the very plea it means to answer. The field does not need more panic labeled as virtue. It needs adults of light. When you become one, action becomes accurate. Fewer gestures, more change. Your presence turns crowds into choirs, not because you manage them, but because you emanate a rhythm worth keeping time with. Consider the microeconomy of attention in ordinary encounters. You stand in a grocery line. The child ahead is restless, the parent frayed at the edges. You do nothing notable, just inhabit your breath until your ribs move like a tide, too patient to be hurried. Coherence generates a small gravity. The child climbs down from agitation without being told. The parent's shoulders lower, as if recalling a weather report that promised gentler air. No one thanks you, and nothing heroic has happened. Yet something tiny and exact, as the future's load just became lighter by a pebble that will not start the avalanche later. Scale is an illusion that humility outsmarts daily. The field of remembrance keeps a ledger more elegant than justice. It records how accurately love is being implemented, and it pays dividends where implementation grows steady. Your steadiness funds invisible projects, reconciliations that will not collapse, inventions that will nobly disrupt, policies that will finally protect what is fragile and essential. You might never trace the line from your quiet to their outcomes, but traceability is not the measure of effect. Fidelity is. A culture matures the same way a soul does, by exchanging spectacle for substance. Each time you decline to trade truth for applause, you train the collective to treasure what lasts. Each time you repair a small breach, instead of broadcasting it, you reduce the market for outrage and increase the value of competence. Each time you honor a boundary with kindness, you teach freedom how to play well with others. Change gathers at this low altitude until, very suddenly, it is the weather. You ask how to serve the whole without abandoning the particular. Begin where you stand and let service become the form your coherence takes when it meets friction. Make promises sized to your spine and keep them until they become part of the landscape. Speak only what your breath can carry without splintering. Listen until your listening persuades you that fewer words will do. Give what you can repeat tomorrow. Receive what you can steward long after applause has moved on. This is slow work that walks fast in the places that count. If despair visits, and it will, because you care, let it be the signal to re-enter your practice, not the license to perform helplessness. Despair is weather, not climate. Climate is the higher timeline that appears when enough of you keep watch without theatrics, long enough for the field to convert your attention into architecture. Then a threshold tips. Cruelty loses the subsidy of your fascination. Cynicism loses its audience, and the future stops begging to be believed because it is busy arriving. The horizon exhales. Nearness replaces distance. You feel it before you name it. The air grows exact, time narrows its gaze, and your breath slows until the room listens with you. Warmth gathers in the center of your chest like a lantern attending its own flame. A soft light steadies behind your eyes. Here the world is most malleable. The stillness window opens, and the fabric waits for your choice with the patience of stardust before it becomes a constellation. You are standing where the road decides to be two roads. This is timeline bifurcation. Do not confuse drama with significance. Nothing storms, nothing shouts. The hinge of history moves on a quiet pin. The choice is not between thunder and silence, but between a familiar noise and a finer music. One path preserves the architecture you have already outgrown, efficient, predictable, small. The other is the higher timeline, not louder, only more faithful. The one that lets your days take the shape of the truth you have finally stopped resisting. Bifurcation is not punishment, it is precision. Systems approach a threshold, then reorganize as a whole. You recognize the nearness of the phase transition by its paradoxes. The old pattern grows busy while feeling strangely thin. Opportunities multiply while becoming simpler. The next step retrieves you, instead of demanding to be chased. You are not being asked to leap across a canyon. You are being asked to walk through a door that was always within reach and only lately admitted it. You listen for a criterion that will not betray you. It arrives without costume. Choose what makes you more coherent. Choose what your breath can carry without splintering. Choose the sentence that needs less volume to be true. The quantum field always privileges coherence because it can compute from it. Incoherence is too expensive to stabilize. When you keep your interior accords belief with word, word with action, action with consequence, reality rewards the lowered noise by solving more of itself on your behalf. You will be tempted to crown urgency as king. Resist. Urgency is sometimes a disguise for doubt. The higher timeline rarely rushes, it reconciles. Let your attention behave like honest light. It does not interrogate, it reveals. As you reveal, what does not belong loosens without ceremony. Some alliances dissolve into gratitude. Some habits lose their appetite. Some fears, exposed to air, forget how to speak. You do not exile the past. You thank it for retiring on time. Feel your body advise you. The chest remains warm when you tell yourself the unembroidered truth. The jaw softens when you agree to the simple task instead of the glamorous distraction. The spine lengthens not by force but by relief when you cancel an obligation that was really a performance. These are not moods, these are measurements. Physics is keeping you honest in the language of sensation. At the fork, you ask what to take and what to lay down. Take what you can repeat without self-betrayal. Take promises that grow quiet power instead of loud identity. Take the small practices that make your attention exact, the way you sit, the way you listen, the way you name what is real without polishing it first. Lay down strategies that require you to forget yourself to succeed. Lay down any belonging purchased with the currency of your own clarity. Lay down the story that suffering is the proof of depth. Depth does not perform, it abides. As you choose, entanglement becomes visible as kindness. Threads once hidden reveal their reach. The email arrives at the minute mercy could still help. A stranger holds a door you didn't know you needed held. A delay spares you from the room that would have cost you a year. You do not owe the universe an apology for this tenderness. Accuracy is efficient. Life prefers it. You wonder how to bless those who cannot or will not step with you. Bless them by stepping without resentment. Bless them by staying available to the version of them that will one day recognize your current pace as their future relief. Bless them by refusing to weaponize your clarity. The higher timeline is porous. It allows visitation without forfeiture. You are not superior. You are simply responsible for the light you can carry now. Then the hinge turns. Not because you made a spectacle of bravery, but because you consented to the smaller, honest movement the moment required. The room reorders by a few quiet millimeters. The sentence you need comes cleanly. The task that matters presents itself in plain clothes. You put your hand to it, and your hand is steady. The destiny vector that once felt like aspiration reveals itself as calibration. You are not chasing a future, you are tuning to a note that was already sounding. There is a hush, the kind that attends a vow spoken without witnesses. You feel the eclipse halo of certainty ring the moment. You feel the page turn without fingers. What was two roads is now one road wearing two names that no longer argue. You do not celebrate, you breathe. You recognize that the most radical change is often the most courteous. It rearranges furniture while you sleep and leaves a glass of water where your hand will reach at dawn. The current inside your spine changes direction, and you follow. You do not need more signs. You need a steadier way to carry the ones you've already received. Integration begins in ordinary light dishes, emails, doorways, the choreography of keys and hands. You let the warmth at your sternum remain, small and obedient to breath, and you allow the soft glow behind your eyes to be a kind of interior daylight. The world does not ask you to perform transcendence. It asks you to keep promises at the speed of sincerity. You are learning how to make coherence a habitat, not a visit. Start with posture. Let the crown float as if a thin filament were drawing it toward a quiet star. Allow the jaw to unhook until the tongue rests like a folded sail. Breathe in a way that convinces your animal you are not in danger. When you move, move as though sound were being recorded. Fewer extraneous gestures, clearer intent. You are training matter to trust you again. This is not severity. It is respect for the body that serves you, for the room that holds you, for the field that listens. Now, language. Integration requires nouns that tell the truth and verbs that do not waste steps. You speak as a craftsman measures, twice in silence, once aloud. You favor sentences that align outcomes with care. You retire phrases that borrow authority from panic. Your words are not spells. They are instruments tuned to a key the world can play in without strain. When you find yourself tempted to dramatize, you choose precision instead. Precision is merciful because it shortens suffering without making noise about it. Habits next. You select one behavior that has been leaking your light and you seal it, not with scorn, with structure. If your mornings scatter you, you adopt a first ritual that is embarrassingly simple. 2 minutes noticing breath, expand the ribs. 1 minute placing attention like a lantern on the day's single honest task. If your evenings tangle you, you choose a last gesture that returns you to the field of remembrance. A sentence written in a small notebook. Today I kept faith with what is true here, even if what you kept was tiny. These are not hacks. They are altars disguised as schedules. Altars reorganize rooms, relationships now. Integration invites you to become increasingly transparent to your own kindness. You practice letting admiration replace comparison when someone else's timing blooms. You practice letting boundaries arrive without apologies when a bond begins to cost more clarity than it yields. You stop outsourcing your intuition to committees of opinions that do not have to live with your nights. You offer others the ease you are training inside, not lenience for harm, but a steady invitation to coherence. When conversations wobble toward chaos, you do not arrest them. You lower the volume of your participation until only truth remains audible. Work follows. You resist the urge to declare a revolution in public. You choose a revolution of craft. You do what is in front of you with a quality that would embarrass your former shortcuts. You make fewer promises and keep them more quietly. You let attention proofread your emails for tone not to polish, to tell the truth without splinters. You remember that excellence is often the most advanced compassion you can offer. Fewer errors for others to clean, fewer emergencies for tomorrow to inherit, fewer apologies that sound like pleas for permission to repeat the same mistake. Your spiritual life becomes less crowded and more honest. You stop collecting practices like souvenirs and choose one as a home frequency. You do not chase visions, you tend the ember that made them possible. You allow light codes to inform your timing rather than your identity. No slogans, only steadier hours. If silence grows thick as velvet, you do not rush to fill it. You trust that the field is recalibrating your reflexes. If tears arrive without story, you let them wash the instruments. Purity is not spectacle, it is improved signal to noise. Evidence appears, the gentle kind. The right sentence finds you in a book you almost didn't open. A door that would once have seduced you with drama looks suddenly poorly lit. The email you feared writing receives an answer that is kinder than your rehearsal allowed. Your body measures this progress long before your mind tallies its shoulders, remembering their dropped position, chest warmth radiating like a small hearth into the air, a light behind the eyes that does not flicker when the day asks for more than you planned to give. Nothing grand has happened, and something irreversible has begun. Beware the common detours. When boredom visits, do not mistake it for absence of miracle. It is often your nervous system detoxing from unnecessary stimulation. When fatigue arrives, do not crown it as a verdict. Ask what would make coherence easier and give yourself that one thing without bargaining water, a walk, a boundary honored on time. When loneliness knocks, do not fill the room with noise. Open a chair for it and listen until you can tell the difference between hunger for company and hunger for self-abandonment. Integration is friendship with your interior weather. You may notice entanglement growing more legible, small kindnesses returning swiftly from unexpected directions, troubles arriving earlier when they cost less to solve, invitations aligning with your unannounced criteria. Accept these with gratitude and without superstition. You are not being rewarded for virtue, you are becoming easier to help. The field loves to assist what assists itself. Finally, you bless the pace. You refuse to measure your life by the drama per minute index, and you choose a slower metric. How quickly you return to yourself after you forget. Integration is this return rehearsed until it becomes instinct. You are not aiming for invulnerability. You are building recoverability. Recovery is the strength that travels. Your awareness untangles a knot, and the road straightens. You arrive at the room without clocks, not a void, a fullness that refuses ornament. Here, sound behaves like a guest who knows to remove their shoes. Your breath slows until each inhale feels like crossing a small, clear river, and each exhale like setting a glass down on wood. Warmth gathers in the chest with no ambition to spread. It simply confirms residence. Behind your eyes, the soft radiance that has escorted you becomes less like light and more like permission. You are not empty, you are unoccupied. Silence is not the absence of message, it is the environment in which message becomes legible. In noise, wisdom must shout to be heard, and loses half its kindness doing so. Here, it speaks at the volume of truth, unmistakable at close range, inaudible to hurry. You practice the courtesy required to receive it. You do not interrogate the quiet, you host it. You do not pull at the curtain, you sit where the wind will do that for you. The stillness window opens wider. Across the threshold, your nervous system unlearns its ancient superstition, that movement equals safety. You let the animal rest. Shoulders slope like hills after rain. The tongue loosens from the roof of the mouth. The eyes, even closed, choose to witness rather than scan. Coherence organizes you from the inside out, running a fine comb through your attention until tangles admit they were only habits. You do not push the comb. You hold still long enough for it to finish its gentleness. Silence performs repairs that effort cannot reach. What was snagged on opinion slides free into simple fact. What was inflated by fear returns to its natural size. The observer loop, relieved of spectacle, begins to clean its own lens. Awareness notices itself noticing and, in that recursion, polishes the glass until fewer fingerprints remain. The quantum field reads this clarity like a precise instruction. Reduce interference, improve transmission. Without knowing when, you feel the interior weather settle to a climate that can be trusted. Memories that once demanded litigation revisit as witnesses, not prosecutors. You do not re-argue them. You acknowledge their depositions and file them in the field of remembrance. This archive does not keep score, it keeps meanings. From it, patterns rise like tide charts, and you learn again that your life has never been random, only too loud to follow. In quiet, morphic resonance can perform its craft. The form you are stabilizing now strengthens the form you were then, and together, you both stop needing to shout. Desire appears, modest and precise. Not the small fireworks that demand a crowd, but the steady flame that asks only for oxygen and honest placement. You recognize it by the quality of ease at its edges. It does not bargain, it does not audition. It sits where it belongs and warms what is within reach. You understand why some prayers never needed words. The posture itself was the petition, and the answer arrived in the posture's continuation. You notice the difference between solitude and isolation. Isolation is a room locked from fear. Solitude is a garden with an unlocked gate. In solitude, the world can find you without extracting you. Birds pass through your listening. Distant traffic moves like a river you don't need to cross. Somewhere, a door closes softly because someone else remembered to be gentle. Entanglement becomes pastoral. Countless tiny mercies arriving from directions you did not map, each a signal that coherence travels more efficiently than explanation. Occasionally thought attempts a coup. It arrives dressed as urgency. Fix this, define that, prove the other. You greet it as weather real, but not sovereign. You let a single breath complete without commentary and watch the headline dissolve back into unremarkable air. If a mantra helps, you choose one that is almost inaudible. I am willing to hear what silence knows. You do not repeat it to drown out thought. You let it ride the current until repetition becomes presence, and presence does the listening for you. In the quietest minutes, light codes present as refinements rather than revelations. The angle of your chair, the order of your tasks, the phrasing of an apology, the timing of a rest that will prevent a mistake downstream. You notice how the small exactnesses spare you from the large dramas. Precision protects. It is not severity, it is love practiced at the scale where life actually happens. If grief rises, you do not negotiate it. You give it a seat with a view. It does not mess the room when it is not asked to perform. Tears come like rain that improves the museum's air. Afterward, colors are truer. If joy arrives, you do not spend it on spectacle. You let it charge the instruments. Joy kept quietly buys you longer listening later. Silence is also where you are reintroduced to trust. Not the brittle belief that nothing bad can happen, but the supple knowing that whatever happens will not require you to abandon yourself to survive it. This is the deeper contract of the higher timeline, not immunity, intimacy. You become accurate enough in your presence that life does not have to shout to get your attention. It begins to speak in normal tones. You do not time your leaving. Silence releases you when it is finished, and one day the finish will be indistinguishable from the way you live all hours. Until then, you rise without ceremony, and the room rises with you unhurried, competent, bright. Nothing about you insists, and everything about you is decided. As the aurora of meaning fades, detail becomes kind. Begin not with effort, but with arrangement. You sit as if the chair were an altar and the air were a witness. Breath slows until it sounds like a tide practicing patience. Warmth gathers behind the sternum. A soft radiance steadies behind your eyes like an inner dawn. You are not summoning anything foreign. You are giving the already present a structure to live in. The body becomes an instrument. The room becomes a tuning space. You allow the muscles of the face to slacken, the tongue to rest, the shoulders to hang like quiet curtains. This is how activation starts, by making accuracy comfortable. Now, attention. Place it in the center of the chest for 3 slow inhales, as if placing a small lantern on a low table. On the exhale, let attention widen to include the room corners, temperature, the way light leans on surfaces. Feel the subtle click as interior and exterior stop competing and begin cooperating. The observer loop stabilizes without announcement. Awareness notices itself noticing and stops interrupting its own sentence. In that cessation of interruption, coherence builds like stardust agreeing to a constellation. We proceed by consent, not force. Silently affirm, I will not hurry what is already arriving. Then ask the quiet for a single word that feels like the shape of today's truth, not a slogan, a tool. When it appears, often smaller than you expect, set it gently in the chest and let breath polish it. You will feel the body adjust to accommodate the words honesty. Posture refines, jaw releases, hands choose a place to rest that does not negotiate with worry. This is the nervous system learning to trust your criteria. Light codes surface as refinements rather than fireworks. You will sense them as subtle urges toward accuracy. Adjust your seat by 2 inches. Change the order of your next 3 actions. Replace the sentence you plan to say with the kinder one that still tells the truth. Do not dramatize these micro-commands. Enact them. Activation is obedience to the small, precise instruction that spares you from the large, avoidable lesson. Name 3 accords and keep them for 1 day. The way you will breathe when surprised, the rhythm with which you will answer messages, the boundary you will honor at the first wobble rather than the 10th. Write them on paper. Paper is a sacrament for intention. Graphite makes vows visible to the quantum field. Set the note where your eye will land without effort. You are making a covenant with your own steadiness, not auditioning for worthiness. If resistance rises, greet it as weather, not enemy. Inhale through the nose for a count that embarrasses your impatience. Exhale longer, allowing heat to leave the bones of the face. On the 3rd cycle, invite the body to remember 1 moment of uncompelled kindness, something you did when no one was looking. Let that memory tint the present. You will feel the inner climate shift by 1/2 degree. That is often all the field required to resume computation on your behalf. Now bring the future close without leaning forward. See it not as distance, but as intimacy awaiting acknowledgement. Without pictures if they crowd you, feel the texture of a life run by fewer apologies and more precision. Let the higher timeline register in the tissues as permission, not pressure. Notice, the breath does not shorten, the chest warmth does not flicker, the body is voting yes. This is the only approval you need. Choose 1 act that will exist tomorrow because you enacted it today. Make it unglamorous and irreversible. The email that ends a performance, the call that begins a repair, the deletion that frees an hour, the calendar block that protects a craft. Place your attention on the 1st inch of the action, not the whole mile. The field loves 1st inches. They collapse imaginary distances that worry built for sport. As activation deepens, you will feel a light torque along the spine, not pain, alignment. It is the destiny vector clicking into place. The subtle sensation of a gear engaging to turn a larger, quieter wheel. Let it turn. Your part is to reduce friction, unclench the throat, unclasp the belly, let the breath arrive without audition. Entanglement will handle the logistics you could not have scheduled. Messages will reach you on time. The correct doors will seem conspicuously easy to find, as if someone painted them the color of relief overnight. Refuse measurement by spectacle. Measure by recoverability. How quickly you return to yourself after the day tilts. Each return strengthens the channel. Coherence becomes less an achievement, more a climate. People around you will not know why they trust their own clarity more in your presence. Do not explain. Keep the channel clean. When doubt attempts negotiation, answer with kindness that declines debate. I will continue. Then enact an inch. When fatigue arrives, respect it before it petitions. Sit back, close the eyes, and let 10 breaths rinse the instruments. Activation that does not include rest will counterfeit itself later. Accuracy includes pace. If emotion crests, neither suppress nor perform. Let tears lubricate the hinge that is turning. Let laughter sharpen the edge that kindness must sometimes carry. You are not being tested, you are being calibrated. The world can now accept more truth from you because you can deliver it without splinters. Before you rise, seal the hour, whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember the prophecy, not for superstition, for embodiment fingers teaching truth to the material world. The prophecy does not advance you deepen into it. You stand where the vow becomes a life. Breath moves through you like a tide that knows its coast. Heat glows at the center of your chest. A soft luminance steadies behind your eyes. Nothing needs to be louder. You are not waiting for permission. You are registering that you already gave it. What began as a whisper has become a posture. This is the seal, not a stamp from elsewhere, but the unmistakable shape of you when you stop interrupting your truth. Feel the architecture you have built with attention, the observer loop shining clean, coherence braided into your hours, the higher timeline no longer a rumor but a road with your footprints in it. You do not bargain with the field, you converse. You do not audition, you align. The destiny vector settles like a compass that has finished trembling, and direction becomes a kindness rather than a demand. The world, relieved to be met honestly, organizes itself around the frequency you can now keep without strain. The seal is quiet because it is complete. It does not shout to prove itself. It arranges reality so proof is unnecessary. You notice how your words weigh exactly what they can carry and no more. You notice how your silences instruct without withholding. You notice how love has become a criterion, not a performance, a low noise signal. The quantum field reads as permission to optimize. Where you would have hurried, you are exact. Where you would have defended, you are present. Where you would have performed, you serve. In the field of remembrance, meanings rise like constellations that only needed darkness to be legible. You recognize the lineage of your own courage, how long it has been practicing to arrive as this ease. Entanglement reveals its gentlest face, help appearing before the plea, right doors standing ajar, wrong rooms forgetting your name. You do not call this fate. You call it fidelity answering itself across the fabric. If fear visits, it finds fewer surfaces to grip. You meet it as weather and keep your agreements. If grief pours, you widen without tearing, and the instruments shine afterward. If joy floods, you let it charge the work rather than advertise itself. Your measure of progress is not applause, but recoverability, the speed at which you return to coherence after the day bends. By this measure, you are wealthy. Now, seal it with specificity. Speak the smallest promise that will remain true in any weather. I will place my attention where it does the most good and keep it there gently. Set this sentence in the chest. Let breath polish it until it reflects you back as someone you recognize without argument. Rise from the chair, as though the room were watching how truth stands, because it is, and because it will learn from you. Between remembering and action, a path appears without announcement. The field has named you, proceed as the naming.